The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to those of you watching on YouTube and iRacing Live. If you travel through Interstate 77 in North Carolina, make sure you take exit 49 for tonight's event, because that will put you on Bruton Smith Boulevard, and that road takes you directly to the heart of tonight's action, the home of Speedway Motorsports Incorporated and the home of action for this 12th round of 36 in the 2017 RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, the WinView Games 150 at Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina. I have James Pike alongside my colleague Brian Macklin up here in the booth, and our lovely and talented producer Cisco Scaramuza down in our virtual production trailer. And Macklin, it's a home game for just about everybody, a home race by default for yours truly as a native North Carolinian, a home race for the sport though as well, because if you go anywhere within 30 minutes of this racetrack, you drive within that radius, over 90% of all of NASCAR has some form of presence in that area. So anytime you come to this racetrack, it's a big deal of a race that you want to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity to go down to Charlotte about 4 years ago and get to go to the Coca-Cola 600, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my lifetime. We went and visited the race shops, and we went to the racetrack, and just it's absolutely insane. Like you said, James, how much there is to do in this area, and it's a place that if you don't live close to it, you need to try to find a way to go to this area, because it doesn't matter who you're a fan of when it comes to your favorite driver. The teams are so open to you getting to go into the race shops and see what they have available and see what they go through on a day-to-day basis. It's absolutely insane. I can't wait to try to make it back down there. I'm hoping to try to make it down there later this year.
Get ready for the day race, the Bank of America 500 in October on Sunday afternoon now. They made that switch just a few weeks ago. But here within the sim and within the Full Throttle Cup Series, our team du jour at the moment has got to be Aegis Motorsports. Those drivers have been on a tear as of late. They've already got 4 drivers with at least 1 victory, and they've got the points leader, David Washington, too. So been a very strong one for them. And I imagine that if they had a virtual shop down here in the Charlotte area, it'd be one very big one that you'd have to spend a lot of time touring, because they've got a ton of time, a ton of resources. They really have been the class of this field through the first 11 races of the season.
Oh, absolutely. They've won the majority of the races this season so far, and they're on the top of the qualifying charts provisionally right now. Dylan Jones sitting up there with that 27.082. Of course, we do have about a minute and a half left in qualifying, so that can still change. However, most of the field has already turned a lap so far. But, yeah, these guys have been just absolutely dominant so far this season, and there's no reason to think that that won't continue tonight. They're all up there inside the top 15 right now, and I'm sure that they're going to be very fast throughout most of this race.
That's right. If you include the connections that we know PowerTech and Aegis have, the only 2 drivers within that first bunch that don't come from that stable are David Comstock from Aftermath Motorsports and Adam Benefiel, who won at Las Vegas earlier to clinch his spot in the playoffs come September. So for the rest of this field, it is very much all about trying to figure out how you top these guys and finding a way to get it done tonight in one of our longer races of the season here in the real Queen City.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be 150 laps here tonight, which is them trying to mirror the Coke 600 that we're going to see on Sunday night. It's not quite as long as that, but it's still a much longer race than what we're used to seeing here on Monday night. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Looks like qualifying is about to wrap up, and I still believe Dylan Jones is at the top of the board. He is indeed. And you brought up that David Comstock is one of those drivers that's up there that's trying to break up this little party that Aegis and PowerTech has going on right now. He's won at this track in the Full Throttle Cup Series before. horse, so there's no reason to think that he can't get up there and challenge these guys tonight and maybe try to spoil the party for him.
A bit of a home race for Comstock as well, being based just outside of the Charlotte area and a Club Carolina member, probably the most prominent of the Club Carolina members in this field tonight that could get it done at one of his home tracks. So we'll get set to see what happens here in the heart of NASCAR country, and we'll get ready to take you through tonight's starting grid as qualifying has wrapped up. And no surprise that another one of the Aegis drivers has taken the pole. Dylan Jones will lead the field to green, followed by last week's race winner, Joseph Tice, teammate, will start on the outside of row one. Comstock, aforementioned, qualified third. Solid qualifying run for him. Anthony DeBarro, been fast and holding it down for WinView Games, tonight's race sponsor. He will start from the fourth position. Andrew Freenage, who won at Talladega 2 weeks ago, will start from fifth. Jonathan Kiddell, one of his best qualifying efforts of the season, starts sixth tonight. A.J. Browning with a really strong qualifying run for that number 20 machine, starts seventh. Trevor Rapallo will begin from eighth, and then it's Lionel Callisto and Scott Simley who round out your top 10 on the starting grid.
David Washington will start in the 11th position. He's super fast on all these mile-and-a-half tracks. Expect him to work his way to the front pretty quickly. Starting in the 12th position, we have Eric Arnold. Then we have Brandon Bowie starting 13th. Ross Cato starts 14th tonight. Making his return to the Full Throttle Cup Series for the first time in over a month, Christopher Hurlow's back. He starts 15th here tonight. Corbin Henstreet will start in the 16th position. Then we have Steve Gottschalk in 17th. Jose Gonzalez 18th. Bruce Ackerman 19th. And Scott Walter rounds out your top 20.
21st belongs to the number 13, the Parker Store Chevrolet of Dwayne Vincent. Gabe Wood in the 09 car starts 22nd. You'll find Doug Roth in the 43 car, ever present in this series, beginning from the 23rd position tonight. Mike Kelly in the number 2 Ford begins from 24th. 25th will be where you find the 04 Braden Whitaker. Sean Casto will start this evening from the 26th position. Carl Shedd begins tonight from 27th. John Abbott will start tonight from 28th. Nick Silver in the Hot Wheels car will start a little bit further back than normal, begin 29th tonight. And Sean Bounty rounds out your top 30.
Randy Yoakum will start 31st tonight, and rounding out the cars that took time in qualifying, Austin Coop will start P32. The rest of these guys all took a provisional. We got Nelson Rivera in 33rd, then Jason Jacoby, Daniel Eberhardt, Shane Ewing, Michael Priester, and Douglas Wyatt rounding out your 38-car field here tonight at Charlotte. And James, last week we saw the Aegis guys do what they do best. They swept the top 4 positions between themselves, or I'm sorry, the top 3 positions between themselves and the Power Tech team. These guys are really fast on the mile-and-a-half. You got to believe they're going to try to do it again here tonight.
And as we look at tonight's track facts, we are at another mile-and-a-half racetrack. We'll go for 150 laps, 225 miles, 24 degrees of banking in the turns, 5 degrees on the straights. And just a quick little clarification note for you. Normally on these mile-and-a-halves, the number at the end denotes the race distance. Tonight, it denotes the number of laps. So that is why we are running the WinView Games 150 and not the WinView Games 225. We'll try and keep you abreast of that and of other updates throughout the field as the night progresses. But regardless, we are happy to have you on board from the Rio Queen City for tonight's event, the WinView Games 150, which goes green now. And no surprise, Dylan Jones gets a solid jump, jumps out about a car length and a half or 2 car lengths ahead of Joseph Tice. Comstock gets down to the bottom, and then it's DeBarro and Andrew Freenage side by side for the 4th position as they come down the back straightaway for the first time.
And DeBarro and Freenage stay side by side as they head to turn 3 for the first time here tonight. DeBarro is trying to fight on the outside line. Looks like he's going to be able to win that battle as he clears Freenage through 3 and 4. Now he sets his sights on David Comstock and goes to the inside as they come to the start-finish line. Going to try to take that 3rd position away from David. He's got a big run going off into turn 1. It looks like he's going to plant it to the bottom of the racetrack. Comstock goes way wide. And looks like DeBarro is going to try to win this battle as well, but Comstock's going to fight back off turn 2. Here they go, side by side down the back.
Stuck there in the back, and it's interesting, especially as you look at the way these drivers will get in turn 3. In a lot of places, you want to get down to the apron as soon as you hit the corner, but not necessarily here at Charlotte, because turns 3 and 4 are actually tighter than turns 1 and 2. So you do kind of end up arcing from high to low, and you apex that corner later than you would at most places, as we have our first yellow flag of the evening here on lap number 3.
Yeah, that was the 0-4 of Braden Whittaker around on the front stretch here. Looks like he got into some trouble coming off turn 4. He was battling side by side with Carl Shedd. Carl Shedd actually shoved him up the track. He made contact, heavy contact with the outside wall, and then that led to a couple more guys getting piled in right there as he was spinning back down the racetrack. Unfortunately, it just looks like number 34 of Sean Boundy had nowhere to go, as well as the 10 of John Abbott. So about a 4-car wreck right here on lap number 2 here at Charlotte.
It's a big incident here to take out some of these cars early on, but not necessarily early enough to really force anybody down pit road. I think it's so few laps in that you're not really going to gain much if you end up coming down pit road at this time. But who knows, you know, we could see a few takers, especially towards the back of this field where you don't necessarily have anything to lose. And if you look at the likes of maybe a Jose Gonzalez, Shane Ewing, Douglas Wyatt, that sort of group, you definitely have reason to come in and get fresh tires, because it certainly won't hurt you at this point.
Yeah, it won't hurt to come in and get tires unless you get trapped in behind a lot of these guys. It looks like some of these drivers that have come to pit road might actually end up having happen to them. So we have a handful of drivers just outside of the top 10 that have made their way to pit road, but a lot of drivers elected to stay on the racetrack. Lionel Kalisto was the first one to bring these guys down. He's got Corbin Hemstreet right behind him. Looks like Brandon Bowie as well, but there's only about maybe like 10 cars on pit road right now, just getting a little bit of service here, looking for 4 tires and fuel, and then they're going to get back out there. We're going to have to wait and see where they come out as far as scoring is concerned, but they're definitely going to lose a little bit of track position as a result of this, because most of the field elected to stay out after just 2 laps.
I'll admit I'm a little surprised to see as many drivers as we have come down pit road. It's a relatively big crowd. Carl Shedd came down. I saw Bruce Ackerman make his way down pit road. Randy Yoakum was there. Michael Priester. So a fair amount of names that actually did decide to come down on pit road, and that will split the pit strategy ever so slightly. It won't be a lot, but you know, if we get a decent amount of cautions or we get a green flag cycle here, you could see drivers try and push it a few laps, maybe try and long pit it, I suppose. And that could shake up things, especially if we get a few green flag runs.
Yeah, absolutely, it could. If we get a couple of green flag runs here and these guys can stretch it just a little bit further than the rest of them, this could play out pretty well for them. The tires are not going to be much of a factor after just a couple of laps. They barely got up to speed and got any heat in the tires, so it's not really going to help them in that sense. But having that extra couple laps of fuel could play into these guys' favor once things get going. And waiting for the timing and scoring to reset, Lionel Kalisto was the first driver off of pit road. He came in just outside of the top 10 in 13th, and currently he scored in 24th. So these guys definitely are going to have an uphill battle trying to get back to the front, or at least get back to where they were, because they did lose quite a bit of track position as a result of those stops.
A lot of track position, but there were enough cars that came down that I think it will at least give them some room to work with, and you're not totally buried back there as you would normally be. So restart here will come as we begin lap 7. 6 laps will be complete. It will be Dylan Jones who is led from the drop of the green flag. Tice has stayed in second since we got our first green a few laps ago. And then DeBarro and Comstock side by side. DeBarro actually scored in the 3rd spot, so he's jumped up 1 position since the start of this race. Pace car will come off of turn 4, make that turn down pit road, and the field falls under the command of Dylan Jones, who gets another solid restart and another good jump ahead of the field. And DeBarro got a pretty solid jump as well, is going to drive right underneath Tice, and we might see that 96 car go up to second if he can get a proper run off the bottom, and he should be able to clear Joseph Tice. So move Anthony DeBarro to second here early on. That 96 car is on the move.
Yeah, absolutely he is. He's moved up into that 2nd position. He started 4th, and he's already gained 2 of those spots. Now he's going to try to set his sights on Dylan Jones and see if he can't get up there and take the race lead. And for Anthony DeBarro, he has not had a very good return to the Full Throttle Cup Series. He's had a lot of speed at a lot of racetracks, but he just has not been able to put together the results that he has wanted or looked for so far since he's been back. He's hoping that he can try to change that luck here tonight, sitting up there in that 2nd position right now, closing in on these guys. Right now, through the first top 6 or 7 cars, everybody is single file. You've got to go back around the battle for 7th through maybe about 10th. They're battling side by side off turn 4 right now, these guys.
It's a whole mess of people. Jonathan Cadell is right there. Yellow flag out again, though, for the 2nd time. So getting a lot of yellow flags to break this up early, and it is the 68 car that is responsible for this yellow. Scott Simley, who just came down pit road in trouble to bring out our second caution of the evening.
Yeah, it actually started a couple cars ahead of him between Randy Yoakum and Bruce Ackerman coming off turn 4. Bruce Ackerman turned the 8 of Yoakum around. Scott Simley had nowhere to go. He just ran right into the back of him. And then it looks like for the most part, with the exception of a little bit of contact from Nelson Rivera, everybody else made it through pretty cleanly. A couple of guys split their way through the grass and did a little bit of mowing to try to avoid that wreck, and did a pretty good job keeping their cars clean as a result of that. But some heavy damage to the 68 machine. He doesn't have a front clip on that car anymore.
And that will hurt you at a place like Charlotte, because you can travel so quickly into these corners. Speeds will be in excess of 190 miles an hour, especially down the front straightaway on corner entry into turn 1. So aerodynamics make a difference here. Having a clean car makes a difference here. Just going to end up being a really, really tough night for everybody involved in that, who picked up a significant amount of damage like Scott Simley. But looks like we're going to have a few takers on pit road. Maybe not. Joseph Tice came down but avoided the commitment cone. So a few people trying to fake and throw people off a little bit. But of the people that have made the decision to come down pit road, Jonathan Cadell has made his way down, as has AJ Browning. I see Eric Arnold has come down pit road as well. So a few drivers deciding to make it now on the second caution of the evening.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be another round of 4-tire pit stops. It looks like for all of these drivers, they only had a couple of laps again on the tires, so really not going to be much of an advantage for the tires. It's just going to be a situation where you're going to have that much more fuel than the guys that are still out on the racetrack right now. And it looks like Cadell, actually Sean Bounty, looks like he might have won that battle off of pit road over Jonathan Cadell, just barely. And then AJ Browning came out third to those guys. So another stop here that is just really ensuring they can go a little bit further on fuel, but I'm not sure, again, that the tires are really going to matter too much. And we saw for Scott Simley, he was on pit road for that first caution, and he got caught up in a wreck. I think if I was one of the drivers, I would have been looking at that and saying, okay, I need to keep my track position and stay up front.
Track position. We say it's key at a lot of places. I'm not necessarily convinced that it matters so much here, because you can make the outside lane work, especially as we get some laps on this track and we get some rubber laid down. This becomes a 2-groove racetrack, and we've seen drivers, especially on Saturday night, we saw Kyle Larson do his customary slide up to the top side, and he made the high line work for a bit. So some of these drivers that have made it happen here in the last few races have been able to use the high side as well. So I don't necessarily think you're in total trouble if you end up way back there on track position. And we also have to take into account there's pit strategy and sequencing that has gone on to this decision-making process as well, and that can change things as the race progresses too.
Well, and we've also got to keep in mind that this is a little bit longer race than these drivers are used to, so they have more time to make up that ground since they are a little bit further back in traffic than maybe they'd want to be. Typically, these races run about 125 laps. We're running 150 here tonight, so they get that extra 25 laps or so to try to make up some of that ground, and it gives them a little bit more of an opportunity to take these chances and see what happens. Gives you that chance to really just kind of play around and figure out what strategy is going to work out best for you. And now, truthfully, this is the time to do it. You don't want to wait to the end. Do it at the beginning. That way, if it doesn't work out in your favor, you still have plenty of time to recover. It's not a horrible call for these guys. It's just a little scary after you see a couple of guys that come to pit road and get caught up in a wreck on the very next restart. It makes you have to think about it just a little bit.
That is the gamble that you take. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. When we get to that point, it ends up being more out of your hands, I think, than in your hands to some degree, because if someone wrecks 2 to 3 cars in front of you, 9 times out of 10 you just won't have anywhere to go, and it's not necessarily anything you could have avoided. It's just something that you run into, and it's just bad luck more than anything. Also of note, as we get the one to go and drivers get formed back up for the restart, I saw Corbett Hemstreet dive down to the apron under yellow, and that to me would indicate that the driver, the number 69, is already looking to save a little bit of fuel, already looking ahead towards the later stages of this race. If this becomes a fuel mileage race and we stay green for a long period of time and go green to the end on a long green flag run, that could end up playing in his favor as well, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. The fuel window with these cars here at Charlotte is between 45 and 50 laps. So if you split that up, you can try to save a few laps here, a few laps there. You might be able to shorten one of your pit stops by a couple of laps and maybe just put a little bit less fuel in it, which could make the difference if this thing stays green. A couple of seconds on pit road under green is a huge advantage down or when you get back out onto the track.
We'll see what happens here. Restart to come as we complete 13 laps, work lap 14. Here goes Dylan Jones. Maybe not necessarily the greatest of restarts, but boy, did Anthony DeBarra put the shot block on Edu Freedows to make sure that he held on to that position. But it might not necessarily work out for anybody behind Freedows because they all kind of had to check up. And the main guy who might take advantage of this is David Washington, who's gone to the outside of the 47. Should be able to complete the pass. David Washington now up to position number 4.
Yeah, where did David Washington come from? He started outside of the top 10 in this race, and he's already up inside the top 5, just 14 laps in. At this point, he's up to P4, so he's on a charge very quickly in this race. No surprise there. This is his forte as far as the mile-and-a-half tracks are concerned. He loves coming to these tracks, but definitely working his way towards the front. As he starts closing in on the back bumper of Anthony DeBarra. Now you've got to wonder how aggressive he's going to be at this point. Of course, we know Dave doesn't have anything to lose at this point with 3 wins already on the season. He's already locked into the playoffs. He can go up there and race as aggressively as he wants to try to get another one here.
3 wins, and as long as he just keeps on running, he'll be in the top 30 in points as well. So this whole rest of the season becomes a test tube, and I think the only thing that matters is going out and getting the wins that you can and making sure that you gain a little bit of experience when we come back here in the fall, because this will be one of the playoff races. And this is a playoff track, so want to make sure you keep your notebook handy for October when we return here, because it will be a deciding factor in who ends up winning the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series Championship. Meanwhile, DeBarra with another really strong run to the inside of Tice. So DeBarra will go up to the 2nd position, and Washington now looking underneath his teammate will try and grab that 3rd spot. And David Washington on the charge, now up to position 3, clears Tice as they come out of turn 4.
Yeah, he put his foot through the door when DeBarra opened it for him and took that 3rd position away from Joseph Tice as well. And now we have to watch and see, can DeBarra chase down Dylan Jones and try to challenge for the race lead? He's closing that gap now. He's down to about 2 car lengths behind Dylan Jones as they work down the back straightaway, trying to do everything he can at this point to run him down and see if he can't take that lead away. Looks like he gave up a little bit of ground in the middle of 3 and 4, though. He didn't get into the corner the way he was looking for. It looks like he got in a little bit high and just could not get the car cut down the way he needed to, but he's trying to recover now as they head back to turn 1. Still right about 2.5, maybe 3 car lengths back at this point, just hanging on at this point.
You wonder if that car might be just a shade tighter than he would like at this stage of the run, though that should change as the fuel burns off, tires go out. These things naturally loosen up a little bit if we get in a long stretch of green flag laps. And now you can see that gap is starting to extend a little bit from the 11 to the 96. 1/2 the last lap. Now, as we complete lap 19, almost up to 3/10. So a little bit better lap that last time by the number 11 car. Meanwhile, a little bit further back in the pack, you've got Corbin Hemstreet and David Comstock going side by side. That's really your first 2x2 battle, and now you see Daniel Eberhardt coming up alongside the 69 car looking for what would be the 8th position. So everybody trying to make things happen. Here comes Eberhardt down to the bottom. Gets a really, really nice run on Hemstreet, and 69 car going backwards a little bit. Going to get passed by Eberhardt, so move Hemstreet back to 8th, and it could be 9th before too long, because here comes our Daytona winner, Trevor Rapallo, looking to get underneath the WinView Games car to go grab another spot up towards the top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a good run going off into turn 3 right now, and it seems like at this point of the race, the bottom line is the preferred groove for these drivers, but I have to imagine as the tires wear out, you're going to see these guys move up the track, and we're back under caution here at Charlotte. Not sure what happened here, looking for the wreck. It looks like it happened off turn 4, was the number 65 machine of Jonathan Cadell around off turn 4, bringing out our 3rd caution of the evening.
Cadell in trouble. I saw him get loose in the back of the fields here coming out of turn 4. Got a little bit of help from A.J. Browning in that 20. They just made contact in the corner, and the 65 car went up the hill, smacked the wall, and hit the fence, and not much more to it than that. But I think more importantly, now that we've got some laps complete here, we should see a lot of the field come down pit road for pit stops here under yellow. We've run enough laps that'll be worth every once in a while to come get fresh tires.
Absolutely. Looks like there was a little bit of a game being played as they were coming into pit road, as the leader almost stopped the field coming in. It looks like maybe he was just trying to let everybody catch back up so that he didn't have an unfair advantage coming onto pit road. But nevertheless, they are on pit road now looking for 4 tires and fuel. It'll be the first time most of these drivers have been to their pit stalls and get serviced here tonight. Looks like everybody gets into the stalls cleanly. Now looking to see if anybody's going to go for 2 tires. I don't see anybody at the front of this field that's going to go for that. It looks like everybody's going to get 4 tires and fuel and then be down and away. David Washington, DeBarro already clear of their stops. And it looks like DeBarro is going to win the race off pit road. He had an amazing stop there. He jumps ahead of Dylan Jones, and then you got David Washington coming out in 3rd, then Joseph Tyson, David Comstock, your top 5.
It wasn't really the stop, I think, that gave DeBarro the race lead here, but that launch out of his box was just incredibly impressive for that WinView Games machine. And speaking of WinView Games, we'll take a moment here now that everyone's come down pit road to remind you that the WinView Games 150 is brought to you by WinView Games. WinView Games is the world's premier play-by-play live sports predictions app, where you can predict plays in real time as games progress and win cash. Best of all, WinView Games is 100% free to play, so download the app on the App Store or on Google Play, and make sure to visit them at www.winviewgames.com/JER289. Once again, www.winviewgames.com/JER289 is the web address to go to for all of your in-game play fantastic prediction needs. So, the WinView Games car will lead the field to green when we get the next restart, and then it will be Jones, Washington, Brandon Bowie. Got a decent jump of things, but looks like there might be a little bit more to that story here. Might have come down pit road. So it is Joseph Tice that is actually in line behind David Washington. So presume we're just waiting for scoring and timing to reset properly. Next in line will be David Comstock, then Andrew Freenage, and then Corbin Himstreet, Trevor Rapallo, and Daniel Eberhardt. And then I believe Nick Silver will round out your top 10 once everything cycles around for our next restart. And going to be interesting to see what DeBarro does. Now he's got control of this field and has clean air for the first time all night. What do you think we should expect out of that 96? And I wonder, what do you think that's going to change on that car in terms of the way DeBarro can drive it through corners, and especially through corner exit, now that he doesn't have to deal with dirty air?
Well, I certainly think that's going to help him in a big way, but I want to go back to a point you were making while we were back under green, and you said that it looked like his car was a little tight. With these fixed setups here on iRacing, the drivers have very few things that they can adjust inside the car, but brake bias is now officially one of those things that drivers can adjust. And as the tires wear out on these cars and you start having to use more brake going into the corner, you may see some of these guys attempting to adjust the brake bias to help the car turn into the corner and rotate through the center a little bit better than what it has been. I noticed the same thing that you noticed, James, that it just looked like his car was very tight on corner entry and through the center. I imagine that these guys may adjust that just a little bit to see if they can't make the cars drive better.
We'll take stock of that here when we get the restart in about half a lap, and a little bit less than that now as they come underneath the auspices of the world's largest video board, or one of them at least, the original big hoss of the NASCAR tracks. You've got the 96 car who has the lead here and will come to the green flag on lap 26. Complete 25 and be done with, oh boy, what the first... Oh boy, I can't do math. 6th of the race, I guess. Won't matter though. We'll still have some green flag racing for you on LSRTV as DeBarro gets a good jump here. About 2 to 3 car lengths clear of Jones, who did not get clear of David Washington. And that 98 car goes immediately to the bottom of the racetrack, as does teammate Joseph Tyson. Washington will get the 2nd spot. So looks like that bad luck hoodoo, at least for now, has evaded the 98 car. He has not had good luck at all in the last 4 weeks, but he's been plenty fast on these 1.5 miles, and Washington getting it done again and making noise and coming towards the front. Might need to get out the jaws fins here in a little bit if he starts to close that gap on DeBar as they go through 1 and 2.
Absolutely, and while he's trying to close that gap on DeBarro, we have a nice side-by-side battle going on behind them. It's David Comstock and Dylan Jones battling side-by-side as they head to turn 3. Dylan Jones has been on defense since the drop of this green flag, trying to hold these guys off. He lost a couple of positions, but he's going to win the battle between himself and David Comstock. So we're going to see the number 11 machine of Dylan Jones go back up to that number 4 position, and he's trying to get away. Now we see Freenar's trying to make a move on the outside. He went a little wide going off into 1 and 2, trying to see if he couldn't get a run on Comstock. It did not work out for him, but he's got a good run off the corner. I still think, James, as the tires wear out on these cars, you're going to see these guys searching around for some grip, maybe moving up the track a little bit, trying to get a little bit more momentum off the corners. I just can't imagine they're going to stay on the bottom all night long.
I don't think you can stay on the bottom all night long because I don't think the tires will allow you to stay on the bottom all night long, and run the fastest laps at that particular point in the run. Maybe in the beginning, but once we get 15, 20 laps to do a green flag run, I expect most of the field to slide up about a lane, maybe a lane and a half, to make sure that they are hitting optimal speeds for that particular point in a green flag run. But looking here at this field and looking at the group of cars that are coming, Washington's closed the gap on DeBarro, and Tice has managed to stay with those two for the most part. That car, that number 5 machine, looks a little bit better than it has for the majority of this night. He might have found something on pit road because he's coming alive here ever so quickly, but I think for DeBarro, that tightness might still be there because he couldn't quite get down to the apron the way he wanted to, and Washington is coming. It's within a car length as they come into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. David Washington starting to search around. You see Dave moves up a little bit into the corner, moved up about a half a lane to try to arc that corner and get a big run off. And it looks like it's going to work out for him as he gets a great run off turn 2. Not enough to close the door and get to the back bumper of Anthony DeBarro, but he definitely got closer. And now, once again, you see through 3 and 4, this is where Washington really gets a better run than DeBarro. It looks like DeBarro just cannot get that car planted to the bottom of the racetrack the way he needs to at this point of the race. And that is allowing Washington to close the gap every single time they go through 3 and 4. You see down here in 1 and 2, however, it looks like DeBarro does pretty good at maintaining that gap. At times, it almost looks like he's a little bit quicker, but so far, it's definitely... Oh, we have a big wreck on the backstretch here. It looks like Carl Shedd, along with a whole bunch of other drivers, is around on the backstretch. Austin Coop is involved. Looks like number 43 machine was involved. Sean Boundy. A big wreck on the backstretch here. Brings out our 4th caution of the night.
Big trouble for a lot of these drivers, and Shedd's a name that has just not had any luck at all tonight. Got caught up in a wreck a little bit earlier and now is in trouble again. Coop will probably just want to forget this one. Didn't really qualify all that well, and now looks like he's in trouble tonight too. So just a really tough night for some of these drivers, and it brings out another caution here at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yeah, there was a couple of different things that happened in that wreck that were a little wild. It looks like there was a little bit of net code in the middle of 1 and 2 that got Austin Coop sideways, and then he just got it into the wall and could not save it, came back and took Carl Shedd and quite a few others along for a wild ride. And then it looks like a couple other guys piled in late, probably couldn't see the wreck because of all the smoke and just had nowhere to go and came in late and got caught up in it as well.
Completing lap 33 and getting ready to work lap 34, and DeBarro brings just about the whole field into pit lane for service. So we'll see if anything happens here on pit road. Looks like everybody hits their marks for the most part. DeBarro might have been a little bit shallower into his pit stall than is what is normally seen, but no issues for the 96, and I imagine it'll be clean off pit road. Will anybody go for strategy here? Not really. DeBarro tries to make it. Oh, actually, well, there you go. There's a bit of a move. David Washington, with the momentum, is able to beat DeBarro off pit road and will assume the race lead, I would imagine. Once we get back green, DeBarro drops to 2nd. Tice 3rd. Daniel Eberhardt with a really strong pit stop. Now the 4th car in line. And then Andrew Farniar is also hearing that the 42 car has jumped onto 2 tires for this segment here, and also hearing that Shane Ewing and AJ Browning have stayed out under this yellow flag. So Washington will actually be the 4th car in line when we take the green.
Yeah, that is, unless those two drivers elect to come to pit road. Looks like AJ Brown and Shane Ewing will indeed come to pit road, so that's going to hand the race lead over to David Comstock with that 2-tire call. And I gotta admit, James, I like this decision. It's early enough in the race to where if it doesn't work out, you still have time to rebound, and it gives you an idea of what you might be able to try to do when you get to the end of this thing. If it works out well for him, and he's in a position to do this again, say with 20 laps to go, this would be an opportunity for him to maybe steal another race here from these guys and get a second win on the 2017 season. Remember, he won back at Martinsville, and he'd love to go out here and win on a 1.5 mile track.
Yeah, it would be nice to see Comstock get a win on a 1.5 miles to back up the win at Martinsville that he got just a little over a month ago. But as we roll under yellow, we'll take a moment to remind you that tonight's broadcast of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Hippie's Paint Shop. Hippie's Paint Shop has over 5 years of experience providing top-quality custom paint schemes for all iRacing vehicles at a low price. Because after all, at Hippie's Paint Shop, the cost isn't high, just the painter. We've seen a good chunk of their flames, the trademark Hippie's flames on a lot of these cars. I've seen Dwayne Vincent, Doug Roth, a few more names I know that I'm totally blanking on. I figure Macklin will probably correct me here in about 2 seconds, but you see their paint jobs a lot throughout the Full Throttle Cup Series, and always fun to watch see go about these places that we visit. It's an interesting look they throw on those cars week in and week out.
Yeah, they do an amazing job, and they put together so much good work, and you can go on to Trading Paints and check out a lot of their different paint schemes that they have. They've got a showroom up there. You can go see what they've got, and you might be able to contact Hippies and see if you can get one for yourself. So they do an amazing job. I've contacted them about a couple of paint schemes over the years, and definitely would be interested in going back to them if I ever need another one. They do a heck of a job anytime you ask for them, and you definitely get your money's worth when you talk to them. So,
Hippie's Paint Shop there, one of our proud sponsors here of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series on LSRTV. But at this point, time to go back. Green flag racing will begin on lap 37. David Comstock on 2 tires will be your race leader. And then it's David Washington, Anthony DeBarro, Joseph Tice, Daniel Everhart, Andrew Freenars, Corbin Hemstreet, and Nick Silver, Trevor Rapallo, Ross Cato, your top 10 pace car off. Comstock held them up a little bit, didn't quite go as early as we've seen some of the other drivers who have had control of these restarts go, but he gets away about as cleanly as the rest of them have and jumps out, and it's Anthony DeBarro now underneath Washington trying to get that second spot. Can he clear the 98 car out of turn 2? Yes, and here comes Daniel Everhart, who has all of a sudden come through. He was back in the back half of the top 10 maybe 10 laps ago. Now all of a sudden fighting with David Washington and trying to grab that 4th spot away from the number 98 machine.
Yeah, he's not going to win that battle, though, as David Washington got a really good run off turn 4. He pinched the 90 down. He was able to keep that momentum up and was able to get away from him. Now sets his sights on the number 96 of Anthony DeBarro. He was closing on DeBarro when that caution came out, and he is right on the back bumper of DeBarro here now. But this isn't going to be for the race lead at the point, or at this point of the race. They're going to be racing for second place here. As you see, he closes right in on the back bumper of DeBarro as they head off turn 4. Gets a pretty good run here. Again, he just gets such a good run compared to DeBarro through 3 and 4. Not enough to get to his inside as they head to turn 1. Is he going to try to make a move to the outside? No, he's going to stay behind him here and see if he can't get the run off turn 2.
Got a whole host of battles going on here, and maybe early battles up towards the front of the field. Then you go a little bit further back, and you have a battle pack with Joseph Tice, Andrew Freenars. You've got Corbin Hemstreet, Trevor Rapallo right in there, and they are all separated by about as many car lengths as there are cars in that bunch. It really is about 5 or 6 car lengths between that pack of people. So, meanwhile, up at the front of the field, that gap between Comstock and DeBarro has come down a little bit, back to 1/10 of a second. So the 2 tires worked initially for Comstock, but they are running him down ever so slightly. May have a battle for the race lead on our hands here before too long, because DeBarro's going to get a really good run out of turn 4. Going to look underneath Comstock for the race lead as they cross the start-finish line.
Side by side as they head to turn one. Comstock on the high side, DeBarro down low. Looks like Comstock is going to heed that position to DeBarro as he goes very wide in the middle of the corner. DeBarro back to the point here at Charlotte. Comstock's going to hang on to second for now as he's able to get an amazing run off turn two to get clear of David Washington. Now he gets in line on the bottom of the racetrack trying to hold off David Washington. And here comes Daniel Everhart now making a charge as he's trying to make a battle with David Washington for that third position. Did not get the run he was looking for to get beside him, but he's right there on the back bumper. You could throw a blanket over these four drivers right now. That's how close they are to one another.
Comstock just went up the hill. I couldn't tell if he overdrove the corner or is just maybe giving the spot to Washington at this point in the race. Either one could be the case. What matters, though, in statistical means and ways and purposes is that Washington will grab that spot from the 42 machine, and Everhart should be able to follow right behind. And there it is up on the scoring pylon. You've got Washington, Everhart, and then Comstock, who's up on the top side and is already sliding back. Now should be fighting Joseph Tice here before too long for the fifth position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of that was giving the position to those drivers, but also having known David Comstock for as long as I have, I think he was also just exploring up there at that point. He was just looking to see if maybe there was a little bit of grip up there, and if it worked out for him, he was going to battle those guys. But unfortunately, with the tires being that he's on two tires and also being that the tires are still pretty fresh, there just wasn't enough speed up on the outside of that racetrack for it to work for him now. But he might have found something where once the tires get a little bit more wore out, he might venture back up there and see if it works for him later in the race. He slotted in that fourth position as of right now, holding off Joseph Tice. Looks like he's finally settled in on these two tires and seems to be hanging on pretty well as of right now. Hopefully it hangs on for him for the rest of the run.
See if he can hold in that spot. Will be a good move for track position if those two tires can gain him at least a few spots and hold him up towards the front of this field as this run progresses. In the meantime, though, DeBarro's got the race lead, but Washington wants to get up there. It's been a little while since we've seen Dave lead one of these races, and I know he's hungry to get back up to the front and resume his role as the king of the mile-and-a-half track so far within this 2017 season, but gonna have to fight the WinView Games car and Everhart too, because that number 90 PowerTech machine is coming ever so quickly. He's right there within 2 to 3 car lengths of the number 98 machine, and that could be a three-way battle for the lead here in 5 or 6 laps.
And it's absolutely amazing to me that week in and week out, DeBarro and Everhart, who have had a storied history between one another, always seem to find each other on the racetrack. And they're only about a car away from that being the case again here tonight at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And I certainly believe at some point we'll see these guys battling. However, right now we got a battle for the race lead as here comes David Washington. He got an incredible run through turns 1 and 2. Now he's right on the back bumper of Anthony DeBarro as they head to 3 and 4. Backs up the corner just a little bit so he can get a big run off the corner. And he's going to do just that as he comes off turn 4, gets a really strong run off the corner. Looks to the inside of DeBarro, and we've got a battle for the lead as they head to 1.
Washington to the inside, should be able to complete it through 1 and 2 if DeBarro doesn't get the good run on the high side. But we've seen so many drivers power up on that outside lane on corner exit to hang on to the position that they're in, and in this case the race lead, but not to be now, at least for the moment, because Washington edges ahead in the middle of the corner, but DeBarro's still there on the outside with speed, with pace. Can he hang on and hang alongside the 98 cars as they go into turn 1? It's close. And then Washington slipped up a little bit in the middle of the corner, so they're still side by side, and Washington's not clear of him yet. And guess who's in this battle now? Everhart, but now lap traffic, I think, in the way, and that ends up just throwing a pig for David Washington. DeBarro ends up the big loser on that deal. He had nowhere to go. Couldn't tell who John Abbott, actually, the driver there on the outside. DeBarro trying to hold his run on the outside, but couldn't make it happen. And all of a sudden, David Washington now leads the WinView Games 150.
Yeah, he set that up perfectly. He knew that lap traffic was coming, and he knew that if he could just get DeBarro pinned behind him, he was going to have an easy shot to take the lead back, and it worked out perfectly for him. However, he's not going to have this lead for long if he doesn't hang on, because Daniel Everhart's right there on his back bumper now trying to take the race lead away from him. These two may be teammates off the track, but right now they are not racing like teammates. They want to try to battle each other for the race lead and see who can get out there and run away with this thing.
Pretty close lap times, too, between Washington and Everhart. Not too much between those two cars. And We know the connections between Aegis and PowerTech. We know those cars are pretty similar. They've got similar playbooks, and at this point, it's just a matter of who can run down and/or outrun who between those two. Because over the past month and a half, Eberhardt and Washington haven't necessarily had the results to show for it at times, but they've been some of the fastest drivers in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a second to update on our pole sitter. He is not doing too well at this point of the race. He's fallen all the way back to the 11th position, so outside the top 10 here. Not sure if he's having issues with his car or what the deal is, but he is not running good right now. He's fallen back again to the 11th position. He's behind Lionel Callisto, who just had to avoid Eric Arnold, who made contact with the turn 4 wall and barely made it around him without contact. Now you see Arnold almost gets into Trevor Rapallo heading off into turn 1. That was a very hairy moment for all those drivers right there, but somehow they managed to get through cleanly. Now you see Dylan Jones trying to battle with Lionel Callisto to get back up into the top 10. Actually, this would be a battle for 9th now that they've gotten around Eric Arnold. He's trying to work his way back to the front, but just does not look like he's got a lot of speed right now, James. It looks like he's really struggling on corner exit. As you see, Callisto is able to just pull away from him off the corner there.
Callisto with a little bit of damage as well on the number 97 car. Still able to hold his car out in front of Jones. So looks like maybe center of the corner might be the issue. In corner entry, it looks like, for Jones from what I can see. But we'll keep tabs on that 11 car and see how he progresses through the night. Meanwhile, I think we ought to get the call to the number 87 of Christopher Herlow, who we haven't really talked about much this race and this season in truth, but started 15th and is up 9 spots since the drop of the green flag, currently holding the 6th position and has managed to get around both Andrew Freenars and Corbin Hemstreet.
Yeah, absolutely. That moves him into the 6th position right here, and now he's about 2 seconds behind the front 5, so he's got a little bit of work to do if he's going to climb up into the top 5, but certainly has a lot, has a lot of speed in that car here tonight, and looks like he's marching his way to the front, and with some time, he might actually get up there and challenge these guys. Running some pretty good lap times in comparison to the leader, was only a couple of thousandths off the race leader that last time by. So certainly has a lot of speed in that car. If he can get the track position, look for this 87 to be a threat for the lead.
But he needs the track position, that's the problem, and right now he doesn't really have much of it. He's first of this pack here that's about 3 seconds back. If you look at the overlay of the top 5 and top 10, you've got all of Washington, Eberhardt, DeBarro, and Tice within just over half a second. Then it's about another half a second back to Comstock, and then about another 2 to Herlow, Freenars, Hemstreet, Jones, Callisto, and then they're all kind of booked together from there. So needs to find a way to drive up and catch Comstock, really. I think that's your goal if you're the 87 at this point, especially since we're in the middle of a decent-sized green flag run at this point. And looks like we could go a little bit longer if we can get these cars to stay up in their grooves and not necessarily try and bounce off each other here, since we do have a long, long way to go. 150 laps this evening, and we're only working lap 58, so almost 100 laps left in this deal before we throw the checker.
Yeah, they are about to complete their 22nd lap since the restart, so they definitely have gotten a little bit of a green flag run established, and if it stays green for another 20 to 25 laps, we might see some green flag pit stops out of these drivers, which could shake everything up. I'm not sure how many of these guys practice green flag pit stops, but this is one of the harder tracks to get on the pit road when you're going full speed. And of course, we saw these guys on Friday night doing the all-star qualifying where they didn't have to worry about speed limit. These guys here tonight, they've got to get down to 50 miles an hour by the time they get to the commitment cone. And when you're doing 175 coming off the corners and you've got to get slowed down to 50 miles an hour, that is extremely difficult to do. I have done this so many times here at this racetrack where I have completely missed pit road because I just was not able to do it. I do think we might have an issue with the number 96 though, James. He's dropped back here in the last lap and a half or so, falls back behind David Comstock and is going to fall all the way back to the 5th position. You have to get a follow-up on it, but he seems to be dropping off here pretty quickly all of a sudden.
Interesting to note, because DeBarro's been up towards that top, 1, 2, and 3 positions for the majority of the night, but yes, that car is fading and fading significantly. That's almost 2 to 3 car lengths that David Comstock was able to put on the number 96 just down the straightaway. So maybe that car just isn't well suited to the long green flag run. That's the best I can come up with, because that's about the only reasonable explanation as to why that car has faded so quickly here within this run. He might have bounced off the wall too, and we just didn't get the chance to see it, but something in that avenue probably explains why the 96 has fallen back to the 5th position at this point.
Well, I went back and glanced through a couple of the laps while we were talking, and I did not see where he made any contact with the wall. It just looks like the tires have went away on this car, and he has dropped off about a half a second just in the last 3 laps. 3 laps ago, he ran a 29.122, and this time, or the most recent time by, he ran a 29.46, and now we see he's coming to pit road. He's elected to make an early green flag pit stop here at Charlotte. Not expecting that at all, but he's going to be down on pit road getting 4 fresh tires and fuel. We're going to have to wait and see how this works out for him, but this is not something that I think was a planned trip to pit road. Only 25 laps into this green flag run. I just can't see this being something they were expecting to have to do.
Short pitting for the 96, not necessarily the greatest of signs for that car. That being said, one car that has taken advantage of this green flag run and has made a bit of a charge is that number 11 of Dylan Jones that you talked about, who at one point in this stage was running in the 11th position, but has now made his way up to 6th and is working on Christopher Herlo for the 5th position. Got a nose underneath the 87. They could be side by side as they go into turn 3 if he plays it right.
Yeah, absolutely. A nice little battle shaping up between these two. You were talking about Christopher Herlo. Now they are side by side as they come off turn 4. You see Dylan Jones trying to make the inside line work, trying to carry that speed down the front straightaway, but Herlo fighting back here. That Superman car, he's not going to give that position up easily. And it looks like this time, though, Dylan Jones is going to be able to charge by as they head through 1 and 2 and take that position away. So that's going to move our pole sitter back into the top 5 for the first time in quite a while here tonight. Still got a ways to go, 4.1 seconds behind our race leaders, but he's making his way back to the front.
Needs track position, but can get it done on a long green flag run. I think that's what we need to know about the number 11 machine. Meanwhile, Joseph Tice has managed to grab the 2nd position from Daniel Eberhardt. So you've got a 5 car that looks like it's pretty strong in the long run as well, and he is holding his own against David Washington. Not too many drivers that we can say that about, especially on a green flag run at a 1.5-mile racetrack this season. But the 5 car has been there, and might not necessarily be too long before we see a different colored Aegis car leading this field around Charlotte.
Well, he did win last week at Kansas, so it certainly would not be a surprise if he's able to get back out there and try to get up front here at Charlotte, make it maybe go for 2 in a row here in the Full Throttle Cup Series. He's got a very fast race car closing in on the back bumper of David Washington right now. I would imagine he wants to get up there and prove that last week wasn't just a lucky moment for him. He wants to get up there and steal this thing away from his teammates, who for the most part have had all the glory this season. Of course, David Washington, we've talked about him. He's won 3 times on the season so far, and would certainly like to get another couple of wins as well. But Dylan Jones has also won 1. We got a couple of these other guys that have been pretty fast. Of course, Trevor Apollo won the season opener at Daytona. Joseph Tice wants to get up there and prove that last week wasn't a fluke. He's here to stay, and he's here to be a threat throughout the rest of the season.
Also notice that Eberhardt is still right there, so between these first 3 cars, you've got a 1/4 of a second really, and Washington ran it just a little bit higher than I think he would have liked. And here comes Joseph Tice looking underneath the 98. Didn't quite get a nose there, but Washington running the middle of the racetrack now, moving up lanes as the tires begin to fade. We talked about this just a little bit ago, about how drivers would start switching lanes and maybe not necessarily hold the bottom throughout all of a green flag run, and we saw it there just a little bit. Washington, I think, moved up more to block than anything else, and Eberhardt now comes down to pit road.
I'm beginning to wonder if DeBarro coming to pit road a couple of laps ago isn't going to force the hand on these guys, because now you do see, like you said, Eberhardt on pit road for 4 tires and fuel as well. This is only about 5 laps longer than it took DeBarro to come to pit road, so this is definitely going to force the hand of the rest of the race leaders now. As you get a couple of these guys running up inside the top 5 coming to pit road, you have to believe that it's going to make David Washington and Joseph Tice think about it, because they are about 1.5 seconds, almost 2 full seconds off of what they could run on fresh tires. Giving up that kind of time on the racetrack to these guys that have already come in, they're going to be several seconds behind if they don't come in within just a couple of laps. As you can actually see, here comes DeBarro trying to unlap himself behind here as he's now passing David Washington to get his lap back. You can see the speed difference that he's got over these guys on old tires. He has just blown these guys off, and now Joseph Tice to pit road.
Tice to pit road, Washington and Comstock now your top two. So I think you might have been right. I think Tice definitely saw Navarro come in and said, all right, that's it. I need to come down and get 4 tires and fuel. We'll watch and see if anybody decides to come down pit road this lap. But we have hit the cycle of green flag pit stops, and we're starting to see some of these drivers come down for 4 tires and fuel, which we know are critical here. Not necessarily only at Charlotte, but at any mile and a half. And Comstock now comes down pit road for service. So Washington will be the last of the drivers out in the front of the field to come and get service.
Yeah, and I'm very surprised that he has stayed out as long as he has, because he's going to lose easily 5, 6, maybe 7 seconds on DeBarro that has already been on pit road, and Eberhard, who came in about 2 laps ago, and now these guys that are on pit road now, it's just going to be a very uphill battle for them to get back into it. And we have a big wreck on the backstretch. Not sure if that's going to bring out a caution, but I see Eric Arnold down on the apron. There's a couple other cars. Looks like Steve Gottschalk was caught up in it. And I'm not sure who the other driver was, but a wreck there on the back straightaway that did not bring out a caution. Looks like there was 2 or 3 others that got down there as well. Amazing they were able to keep it on the apron and not bring out a caution there.
Heavy smoke from the number 91 car. And just looking through this field, I see Jason Jacoby down on the apron as well. So I imagine those two probably got tied up and caught up in something. Meanwhile, Washington is still out there on old tires. So I get the sense that he's kind of just said, well, if I'm not going to be the first to pit road, I'm going to be the last to pit road, but I'm also going to have better fuel mileage and a better shot of making this race if it goes green till the end than anybody else. That's the one thing you do gain if you stay out this long.
So I don't mean to move away from your point, but I was just going back and looking at that replay of the wreck, and that actually started with one of our front runners, Daniel Eberhardt, was trying to get around the slower car of Jason Jacoby, who had not been the pit road, and coming off the corner, they met on corner exit up against the outside wall, and that kicked Jason Jacoby down to the inside. Then you see Eberhardt slam hard into the outside wall, then come back across the infield, and then got hit hard by Eric Arnold. So a driver that was running up inside the top 5 has now found himself with very heavy damage. He's on pit road, and he's currently 3 laps down. Definitely going to hurt his chances and eliminate his chances of getting a win here tonight at Charlotte, but I'm not sure he's going to get back out there because that car was really beat up from that wreck.
You got to find a way to avoid lap traffic and make sure that it doesn't end up causing you big time issues in your race. That's so key in this, and it looks like trouble has befallen Daniel Eberhardt and taken him out of contention for the win here at Charlotte. Meanwhile, while you went over what happened in that incident, David Washington did come down for service and has come back out onto the racetrack, and now should be somewhere. Looks like he's going to settle in the 14th position, a lap down as it stands, because we're still waiting on Christopher Herlo, Dwayne Vincent, Nick Silver, Sean Casto, Nelson Rivera. Those 5 cars yet to come down pit road, and then of the drivers that have, looks like it will be DeBarro, Rapallo, Tice, Comstock, and Mike Kelly, your top 5 when we get everyone cycled through.
And I want to take a second to point out how much fresh tires mean to these drivers. Look at Anthony DeBarro sitting in 6th. He is a full 11 seconds ahead of Joseph Tice, who waited about 6 laps to come to pit road compared to Anthony DeBarro. That's how much of a difference Anthony DeBarro getting those fresh tires when he did was compared to these drivers. And you see David Comstock about a second behind Joseph Tice. And then the rest of these drivers still trying to catch up. David Washington is still a lap down. Actually, he just unlapped himself, but he is about 6 seconds behind his teammate Joseph Tice. So these guys that came in just a couple of laps early got a huge advantage by getting those fresh tires quicker than David Washington and David Comstock. And as you saw Christopher Herlo staying out there for a while, Christopher Herlo is just now coming off pit road with fresh tires for the first time here. So he's certainly going to lose a ton of time as well. He was sitting up there in around the 6th or 7th position, and he's going to be, I would say, about a half a lap behind when it's all said and done.
That is the interesting thing here. So it is about 7 seconds, I would say, that Washington gave up to DeBarro by waiting to pit as long as he did. The trick, though, and the key thing here to remember, though, is that DeBarro is struggling with tires. as we get down towards the end of what would be his run. And those laps of the number 96 car will be slower than those of everybody else that came down during the normal part of the cycle from here on out. So he's got about 10 seconds to Joseph Tice right now, but that number should come down as this run goes green, if it goes green. But if we get a yellow before Tice can catch DeBarro, boy, does that look like a brilliant move for the 96.
Oh, absolutely. And as of right now, it is a brilliant move on the part of the 96. And he's not going to give up that entire lead to where he's going to fall behind these drivers. And by the time they do catch him, if they catch him, he's going to want to come back down for tires again, because I have a feeling while when it happened, I didn't think it was a strategy call. I'm beginning to think it was, because of how big of a lead that he's got over these drivers right now. I think that you're going to see him stick to a short pit strategy like that, which is going to continue to give him the advantage on tires and give him a big lead. And I just don't think these guys are going to be able to overcome that gap as quickly as they need to if it stays green here.
It'll be interesting. We haven't really had a race like this, to be honest, in a while, where we have a green flag run and we have strategy plays making the difference more than anything else. And I think we also have to remember that DeBarro won't be able to go as long on fuel. So I think your magic number here, if you're going to make it to the end, is about lap probably 105, somewhere in the neighborhood of that, puts you 45 laps away from the end of this race, and does make it easy enough to make it all the way under green flag conditions, though you definitely don't want to push it too much harder than you normally would at that point. So we are 20 laps away from that now, maybe just a shade over. We're working lap 85 at the moment, so I think we'll have to watch where DeBarro comes in relation to lap 105 and what he decides to do as far as taking that final pit stop and how much he may or may not have to save in order to make it to the end.
Well, I actually just went back and looked at DeBarro, and when he came to pit road, it was lap 63. So if he can stretch this thing the entire fuel distance that he can run, he would be able to make it on one more stop to the end. He would be able to get to lap 105 and actually be able to go a couple laps past that if he wanted to. The problem is, as you mentioned, he's going to be really off on speed the longer this run goes, because he pitted so much earlier than the rest of these drivers. Although he still has about a 6-second advantage over the next guy on fresh tires behind him, and that's Joseph Tice sitting back there in the 5th position, and that's actually about 5.5 seconds now. So Tice is coming, but he's not gaining as much time as he would like. I think this as of right now, if it stays green, this thing is in DeBarro's hands.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. But yes, that's the key, at least at this point in the race, is that Tice is gaining ever so slightly on DeBarro. The gap now still about 6 seconds, but I know Tice had to deal with lap traffic that last time by, so that might have cost him just a bit. Dwayne Vincent, though, is the last car that needs to come down pit road along with Nick Silver, so we'll try and figure out when they might come down pit road, or if they're just going to try and stay out. I think both of those might have come down. Well, here comes Silver, so that answers one part of this question. So now just waiting on Dwayne Vincent here to make it happen.
Yeah, and as he gets ready to get passed by DeBarro for the race lead here, because he is on such older tires, you're going to see this is going to be a really easy pass for DeBarro as he goes around on the outside, takes the race lead away, and is now back to the point. And he's going to have about a 4-second advantage over Joseph Tice when it's all said and done. But took DeBarro about 30 laps, but he's back to where he needs to be out front here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway with that beautiful WinView Chevy out there. Just looking awesome for these guys here tonight.
Big night for WinView Games, race sponsor here. They've got the race lead as well. So now the question, I think, becomes, when does Vincent pit and where does he come out in relation to all of this, and how far can he stretch that 13 car, and maybe he's the one that ends up leading the pile of drivers that might try and stretch it from maybe even lap 100 all the way to the end. That, I think, is the big question we have to ask regarding the 13 at this stage.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back and see when Dwayne was last on pit road, and it's been quite a while. He's got to be getting close to being out of fuel at this point. You have to go all the way back to lap 37 the last time he came to pit road. So I guess our fuel window is a little bit further than I thought, because that's about 65 laps right there for him. So he's been out there for quite a while. hanging on. He might be just trying to save fuel, see if he can't make it on a one-stopper from here, which could change things up just a little bit for our strategy. Is he's definitely, if he can go this far at this point, he can definitely make it from here to the end. Could be a little bit of a strategy call on this part for our 13 car.
It could be. It could be. That's the one thing that jumps through my head. If you're staying out this long and you're giving up this much time lap after lap because of the old tires, the only real explanation I think that you've got is you're going to try and stretch it and find a way to make it just a one-stop race between here and the end. It's possible. Definitely not easy, but it is doable. And it would be interesting to see someone pull that off on Memorial Day. We saw it last year in the Indy 500 with Alexander Rossi. Found a way to stretch it so that it was no more than a shot glass of cars worth of fuel that stayed in the 98. Might see something here with Dwayne Vincent along those lines.
And just have to wait and see. Still waiting to see when Vincent's going to come to pit road, and I'm hearing that he's going to come this time by. He's announced to the rest of the people in the server he's coming to pit road, and indeed he is. He comes down to pit road for his pit stop to get 4 tires and a full tank of gas, and now we get to see if this strategy is going to work out for the wily veteran Dwayne Vincent here. See if he can't sneak one out and get a victory from these guys.
We'll wait and see what happens with Dwayne Vincent when he comes out of pit road, and we'll take a side-by-side commercial break here and keep you guys in on the action while we take a pit stop ourselves, and then come back and we'll reset the field for you. You're watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing. Welcome back to the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking here on LSRTV. Working lap 99 in the WinView Games 150 at Charlotte Motor Speedway tonight. And we might have waited a little bit past midway, but we are going to take our midway race break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned events from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Cars Tour, USAC, and more. Joseph Tice is your race leader at this point. He has passed Anthony DeBar. DeBar, incidentally, is now on pit road. Comstock sits in the second position. David Washington currently holds third. Dylan Jones has recovered and run really well under these green flag conditions, back up to fourth after sliding back outside of the top 10. Andrew Freenage is in the fifth position. Then it's Lionel Callisto sixth, Mike Kelly seventh, Trevor Rapallo eighth, Brandon Bowie ninth, and Gabe Wood rounding out your top 10.
Christopher Hurlow currently sits in the 11th position, and fresh off of pit road on 4 fresh tires, Anthony DeBarro is in 12th. He's currently being scored as the last car on the lead lap. However, he is going to be a lap down when it's all said and done. Scoring just updated. He is a lap down in the now 13th position as Nick Silver takes that position away. Ross Cato is in 14th, and we have Dwayne Vincent. And actually scoring is going to be a little tricky here for this lap because they're trying to work past the DeBarro machine. Dwayne Vincent's going to move up into the 13th position, then Sean Casto will move to 14th. DeBarro's down to 15th. Then we have AJ Browning in 16th, Nelson Rivera 17th, Ross Cato is 18th, 19th goes to John Abbott, and then Scott Simley is in 20th.
21st, Shane Ewing. You'll find him there. Douglas Wyatt currently in the 22nd position. 23rd belongs to Austin Coop. Jason Jacoby in the 24th spot. Daniel Everhart 25th. All these drivers have run into trouble here at some point earlier on tonight. 26th belongs to Eric Arnold. Steve Gottschalk 27th. Corbin Hemstreet 28th. Jonathan Cadell 29th. And Scott Walter in 30th.
31st goes to Doug Ross tonight. Bruce Ackerman will finish 32nd. Carl Shedd is 33rd. Michael Priester will finish 34th. Sean Boundy is 35th. 36th will go to Randy Yoakum. Jose Gonzalez will finish 37th. And rounding out your 38-car field here tonight, Braden Whittaker will finish 38th. And this concludes our late but nevertheless iRacing Midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself on the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. Again, that is iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. And with the new dirt content that we have, James, that's exactly what you want to be doing right now is get on iRacing, check out some of that stuff, and go dirt racing.
Go dirt racing if you want. Also of note here, if we're tracking DeBarro and his strategy, it will be about 50 laps that he wants to make things happen with on this last set of tires. Came down pit road on lap 99 as he was coming to lap 100, so he has effectively split the last portion of this race in half. And we'll look to make it 50 laps on this set of tires. Might be possible. He could stay out all the way and win. That's the question. We'll just have to see what that 96 car can do. And I think more importantly, whether or not we go green the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And while all that was going on, David Comstock snuck up and took the lead away from Joseph Tice. I'm not sure if we touched on that at all, but David Comstock is our race leader now. He's got about a 4 car length or 4/10 of a second advantage over Joseph Tice now. 2.1 back to David Washington. But Comstock used that 2-tire strategy earlier on in the race to get a little bit of track position. He was able to hang on through this long green flag run, stay pretty close to the race leaders, and now that everything has cycled around and he's got 4 fresh tires, we're seeing a lot of speed in that 42 machine as he leads the way here inside the last 50 laps of the race, trying to pull away now as he does open that gap up just a little bit on Tice. He's trying to get away from him, but David Washington's got some pretty good speed in his car as he actually ran just a hair faster than Comstock that last time by.
A little bit. Remember, Washington was the last car of the leaders to come down pit road and get tires, so his lap should be faster than the majority of the drivers around him. He's got a few less laps on those good years than everyone else. So expect Washington to come up here, and it might not be too long before he comes and tries to grab the race lead. The question is whether or not all of these drivers can make it to the end. I think that's the game we're playing, and if we go green to the end, we might be looking at some fuel strategy here to determine who wins this WinView Games 150.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now I'm very interested to see how things work out for Dwayne Vincent, because he's the one driver that was going to try to stretch it on just one more stop, and he's, I think, in one of the better positions right now, although he is still behind Anthony DeBarro, so he's not going to be able to beat DeBarro unless he can figure out a way to catch up to him and get around him. But he's definitely got an opportunity to get a good finish here tonight, but not sure how this is going to work out. We'll just have to wait and see. But you see DeBarro is slicing his way up through this field. He's almost caught up to our second place runner, and is only about maybe 2 seconds away from being able to get his lap back, as he has got some tremendous speed with those fresh tires. Closes in about that 2-second gap in one corner to pass Joseph Tice, and now he's got one more guy to pass. And actually, David Comstock's on pit road, so he's going to be back on the lead lap, and Comstock's going to come in and get his 4 tires so that he can try to get back out there and see if he can't challenge DeBarro for the race lead when the cycle runs through.
If you're making note, that's lap 111 that Comstock is going down pit road, so about 40 laps for him to make it to the end. And here comes David Washington. Looks like he's coming down pit road as well, so looks like it'll be about 40 laps for the 98 car to make it to the end of this race as well. Looks like our combinations and permutations of pit strategy are coming live right here as we get towards the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. Waiting to see how this is going to shape up with Comstock on pit road compared to DeBarro. DeBarro is already around on turn 4, coming to the start-finish line now. Comstock's just now getting up to speed in turn 3, so he's going to have about a half a track to try to close in on DeBarro if he's going to get ahead of him, assuming this thing stays green and he's able to have that opportunity to try to chase him down. Comstock currently being scored 1 lap down in the 10th position, but again, that's because we still have a handful of drivers that have not come to pit road. Joseph Tice being one of those drivers. He is your race leader, and he's got about a 10-second advantage over Trevor Rapallo, who currently sits in the 2nd position as this round of green flag pit stop cycles through. We only have 7 cars on the lead lap right now, James. This would be the most inopportune time for some of these drivers to have a caution come out because you're going to trap a lot of them a lap down.
You really don't want to end up in that position. And a reminder that Tice is on the regular pit cycle of all these drivers that have been up towards the front. Him and Rapallo and Jones, I believe, are the 3 that have been on the regular pit cycle that we started this race on. And here comes Tice. So that should answer that question. And now it should be Chris Hurlow that takes control of this race. And we'll see what the 87 car can do. But yes, you really want to avoid a caution at this point and just hope that we don't get one here. Though that might change it a little bit now that Tice is coming down pit road. It'll unlap a few drivers here, but still want to avoid it because it will trap most of these contenders a lap down.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, 10 being scored on the lead lap. And I'm looking at the difference between DeBarro and David Comstock right now, because when this thing cycles through, DeBarro is going to be your race leader, and Comstock should be in the 2nd position based on when they came to pit road. And as it stands right now, DeBarro has about a 9-second advantage over David Comstock. The problem, he's running about a half a second a lap slower than David Comstock because he came to pit road just a handful of laps sooner than David Comstock did. So he's certainly going to give up that time. Now the question becomes, does David Comstock and Joseph Tice and David Washington and all these drivers that have come in behind Anthony DeBarro, do they have time to run down DeBarro and take that lead away from him once again? We're inside 45 laps to go now, so definitely beginning to run out of time. Actually 35 laps to go. I've got my Jacob Seelman math going on, but they're running out of time to get to run up to these guys and catch them.
Not all of us can be stat boy there, Mr. Macklin, so you're forgiven on this case. But yes, that I think is the number to watch. You watch the gap between DeBarro and Comstock, and also Washington too. That might be the other one we keep an eye on. Most of these drivers should be good to go to the end on tires and fuel. So it now becomes a matter of, can you run down DeBarro if you're Comstock or Tice or any of the other drivers? And if it's DeBarro, can you hang on? Can you find a way to make it happen? The gap from DeBarro to Comstock at this point is about 7.7 seconds. If you do the math, you split that, that's about 15 laps worth of racing that Comstock has to outpace DeBarro at by that half a second margin that we talked about in order to get to him. We've got more than that left, so it's definitely doable. The question is, will Comstock's car fall off as the laps wind down?
Well, and the issue that he's going to have to worry about is that he's got David Washington behind him about 4.5 seconds back, and Washington is a little bit quicker than Comstock at this point now because he's on fresher tires than Comstock. So he's worried about trying to run down Anthony DeBarro, but at the same time, he's got to be looking in his mirror just a little bit, thinking, well, are these guys going to try to catch me from behind? Are they going to be able to catch me as this run progresses? We're at 32 laps to go, 31 laps to go right now. He's got time to run down Anthony DeBarro. He's going to have to do that quickly, but he's also got to try to make sure he's maintaining that gap between him and the guys behind him, and certainly is going to be a concern. I think David Washington might be able to catch both these drivers and make it a 3-way battle for the lead before it's all said and done.
Gonna be close. Gonna be really tight. Comstock now up to the 4th spot. He's gotten around Dwayne Vincent, and the gap is now maybe just over 6.5 seconds. So it's coming down for sure. How will DeBarro drive if Washington gets to him? That's a big question. We'll see what happens with that. But I think we're on a crash course and a collision course in about 10-15 laps to see DeBarro and Washington going, and DeBarro and Comstock rather, maybe even Washington as well, going head-to-head for the race lead.
Yeah, absolutely. How about Christopher Hurlow? I know he's out there on a strategy call, but we've not called him, and he's the race leader while all this is going on. You know what he's looking for right now, James? He's looking for a yellow flag that would give him this track position, and at this point of the run, it would force all these drivers back to pit road for 4 tires and fuel. That would be the perfect scenario for the number 87 machine. We saw earlier in the race that he had a lot of speed. He was able to run comparable lap times to the race leader. You put him on the same set of tires or an equal set of tires as the rest of these drivers, he could be a spoiler in this thing. So at this point, he's got a 3-second advantage over Anthony DeBarro. Of course, that gap is shrinking with every lap that passes. He's just sitting here calling out to his spotter, I see debris in turn 1. I see it everywhere. We need to throw a caution. He's wanting that yellow flag bad.
Boy, would he love David Hoots to come over race control and just yell, put it out, put it out, put it out, really, really bad. That would be the best friend of the Superman car at this point. But still watching that gap between DeBarro and Comstock. They run second and third at this moment, and the gap is now down to 4.4 seconds. Comstock is coming for DeBarro. Gonna be close, gonna be tight. We'll see who gets it done, though. I feel like we're just kind of, it feels a little bit like qualifying. I feel like I'm watching the telemetry here more than I am the actual racing on track, because it's just all about clean laps. And maybe also of note here is that at least on my screen, we've got Comstock now in sight. He can see DeBarro as they go down the back straightaway. So that sort of fuel to stoke the fire might be there too. Might have just gone up a little bit, because now the target is visible if you're the 42 car.
Absolutely, and on a completely unrelated note, Christopher Hurlow almost got his put it out moment about a lap and a half ago, because coming off turn 2, Dylan Jones got into it with Sean Casto coming off the corner, got sideways, spun it down to the inside wall, did not come back up onto the track to bring a caution out, but very easily could have slid up the racetrack and brought out that caution and given Hurlow what he was looking for. Dylan Jones, however, was able to keep it down on the apron. As a result of that, though, he is a 1 lap down in 16th. So our Pulsator not having the night that he was looking for. Unfortunately, he's got some pretty significant damage to the left side of that car where he made contact with the wall, and you see he's just trying to hang on and see what happens. But we have a change for the race lead. Anthony DeBarro was able to take that lead away from Christopher Hurlow. So now DeBarro back to the point, but for how long is the question. He's got a 1.6 second advantage over David Comstock here with about 24 laps to go at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
When they cross the stripe, Hurlow comes down pit road to get service. The problem for DeBarro is that he ran right behind Scott Sibley's very, very, very disabled machine and got trapped there for a bit, and that cost him about a second and a half to Comstock. So it's now a second here, and this might be a bit inevitable unless we see something very crazy for DeBarro, but the tires are going to make it really, really tough for the 96 car to hold out on the 42. Also, I think worth noting here that we have completed lap 125, and in a normal race here in the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, we would have thrown the checkered at that point. But since we are mimicking the Coca-Cola 600, here are extra 25 laps, and they begin now with a charge for the race lead. Here comes David Comstock underneath Anthony DeBarro. Don't know if there's going to be much of a fight with it. Not even. Comstock to the race lead. DeBarro back to second, and now the onus might be on David Washington to run down both of these drivers and close the 3-second gap to Comstock and go grab this race win all for himself. But back to the point I was making, in this extra set of 25 laps, do you have that extra bit of stamina? Do you have that extra bit of push and the ability to get it done in the extra set of mileage that we throw on here in the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series?
Well, in the longer races, really bring out the best of the best in these races, because you really, like you said, you have to have the stamina and you have to have the longevity to be able to go that extra distance and be able to capitalize and still finish the race out the way you'd want to. 25 laps may not sound like a lot, and in reality, it's really not a lot. But when you're out here, especially on a long green flag run like these guys, which they are approaching 100 laps under green flag. If they can make it to lap 137, that will be 100 laps of green flag racing. at a track that is as challenging as Charlotte Motor Speedway is, that is a long time to run under green flag. And having to run that extra distance, as you mentioned, because on a normal night, this race would be over. We'd be getting ready to talk to our race winner and our top three, but we got to sit here and call another 20 laps of racing. These guys have to be mentally prepared for that extra distance and be able to finish it out for the remainder of the night.
Closing it out is the theme, and that looks like it might be something that might be right down David Washington's alley, because he has now found the rear bumper of the number 96 car, and it shouldn't be too long before we have a battle for second. And the question for DeVar is, how hard do you push Washington, and how much do you hang on to that spot, and how hard do you race him? And if you're Washington, what kind of moves can you pull to get around the 96? They make contact. Oh, there goes DeVar into the wall. DeVar around. He made contact with David Washington. Yellow flag comes out here on lap 132. There's the answer to the question. How hard do you race David Washington with everything you've got, even if it means putting yourself into the fence? And DeBarro made contact with Washington and just couldn't hang on to it. And DeBarro now in the fence with a damaged car. That could spell an end to not only his race win hopes, but his hopes at a decent finish here tonight, because it looks like there's a significant amount of damage to the right front corner of the number 96 machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up that you were wondering how hard DeBarro was going to race Washington. I look at that wreck, and I truthfully don't know where DeBarro was doing a whole lot of racing. He gave the outside line to David Washington, and coming off the corner, it just looks like Washington did not get off the corner the way he was wont to, and he just got into the door of DeBarro. I think DeBarro was going to give that position to him, but they met in the middle coming off the corner. It looks like Washington just ran about a half a lane lower off the corner than he necessarily needed to, and I think that led to the contact that brought this caution out. But I think I jinxed it, James. I said we were about 7 laps away from 100 laps of green flag racing. We didn't make it. Now these drivers are on pit road for what we might see as their final pit stop of the evening. I don't think anybody's going to go for 2 tires. It should be 4 tires all the way down pit road for these guys.
4 tires and fuel here in the money stop. And I look at a driver like David Comstock, who took the 2 tires to get the track position, has been able to hang up there all night. How much does this benefit him? How much does this maybe help? I think Joseph Tice, too. We know Washington was coming, but Tice definitely gets a big gain from this. He sees that 3-second gap close down to nothing. Comes off pit road 3rd, by the way. Comstock wins the battle off, then Washington, then Tice, then Freenars, who we haven't really said all that much about here within the last 50, 60 laps. All of a sudden, he's back in it. And how about Mike Kelly in the 2 car? Hasn't really been near the top 10 consistently all night. We get down to it, working lap 134, and now the 2 car finds himself right there. Looks like he's the 5th car that came out of pit road. So few new faces have decided to pop up here when we get down to the end of this WinView Games 150.
It's sure to be an exciting battle, because now you got all of these drivers on 4 fresh tires, and you've got a couple of very hungry drivers at the front of the field. Of course, David Comstock looking for another 1.5 mile victory. The last couple of wins he's gotten in this series have been on short tracks. He wants to get a victory on the big tracks again, just to prove that he can still do it. And then David Washington is Mr. 1.5 mile. He's got 3 victories this season, all on the speedways. He wants to try to add another one to it. And then Joseph Tice, he wants to go for 2 in a row. He won last week at Kansas. He wants to try to grab another one. So you got a lot of guys at the front that want to try to get up there and steal a win. And then how about Mike Kelly, as you mentioned, still looking for a win this season? It'd be a big moment if he could get up there and steal one away.
Wouldn't be the first time Kelly's been able to play some sort of strategy to get up to the front. That's part of the reason he got into the championship 4 last year, was able to get it done at Phoenix in November off of pit strategy. So wouldn't be surprised to see Kelly start making a charge now that he's towards the front of the field. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what he can do. Freenars is another one that jumps out at me. Lionel Kalisto, who's got a bit of damage to the front of the 97, but has been able to keep that car up at the front of the field and been able to make it happen here towards the end. Just a lot of storylines we have to keep track of. But while we have a moment, we'll take this chance to remind you that tonight's broadcast of the WinView Games 150 for the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by RealSimRacing.com. RealSimRacing.com has a league for every iRacing driver, including the Winston Cup Series on Wednesday nights and the Midnight Thunder Speedway Series on Thursday nights. For more information, you can visit them at www.realsimracing.com. RSR.com. Everybody gets to go here 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. Restart will come on lap 137. So 13 laps to go when we come across the stripe and make it happen. Comstock will lead the field to the green, will be the control car on this restart. Then it's Washington, Tice, Frenars, Kelly, Callisto, Vincent, Nick Silver, Brandon Bowie, who we haven't talked a lot about, and Trevor Rapallo in 10th. So that's your top 10 for this restart. Here we go, Macklin. You want a little short dash to the finish. We're about to get it.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. We're going to have about 15 laps, fresh tires, under the lights at Charlotte. This is exactly what we want to see on a Monday night here in the Full Throttle Cup Series.
Here we go. Crunch time here in the Real Queen City. Green flag out. Here goes Comstock. Away pretty well. 1 car length, 2 car length, maybe even 3. I don't know if Dave got the greatest of restarts, but it's enough for Comstock to get going and get away quickly. And is able to jump out and start arcing the corner the way you would if you were normally up to speed, just to get a little bit more momentum. Meanwhile, behind him, Washington's clear for second. Tice for third. Kelly and Farinar side by side for fourth. But what a move from Farinar to come right down on Kelly. He might have been clear by maybe a half a foot, if that. Kelly slips up the track a little bit, gets loose on the exit of the corner. Here comes Vincent underneath him. They're going to try and fan out to get underneath that 2 car. Didn't quite work for Callisto, who jumped to the outside, tried to make it happen, and got caught up into the outside wall a little bit. They're side by side back there, but back at the front of the field, it's still David Comstock pacing this RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series race.
And while those guys are going single file at the front, this battle back here on the outside of the top 10 is, or on the back half of the top 10 is insane, as you got Mike Kelly trying to hold off Brandon Bowie, Nick Silver, Trevor Rapallo, and a host of others there as they head to turn 1. He has been battling hard on the outside line. He's going to lose the battle to Brandon Bowie, pinches down Nick Silver in the middle of the corner, trying to see if he can't hold him off and at least hang on to 7th, and he's going to win that battle as he moves and gets clear of Nick Silver. He's going to bring Trevor Rapallo, who gets kicked sideways in the middle of the corner. Somehow Trevor Rapallo hangs on to it. He got kicked sideways going off into the corner. I thought for sure that was going to be a wreck, but somehow Trevor Rapallo gets that thing back under control. He's going to lose a ton of track position. He's going to fall back to at least the 13th position, but that could have been much bigger than it was as he's able to keep a hold of that thing.
Almost looked a bit like Ryan Newman in All-Star qualifying, trying to drift it through turns 3 and 4 sideways, but he managed to hang on to it. The problem is that he dropped all the way to the 13th position, so big trouble there for the number 9 machine. Not going to be the finish that I think he hoped for at the end of this evening. That being said, still a very tough battle here at the front of the field, and you've got that 2nd, 3rd, 4th pod of the Aegis cars still together, but they can't run down Comstock at the moment. And here comes Joseph Tice underneath David Washington, trying to grab the 2nd position. We'll see the Aegis drivers go door to door and wheel to wheel. They'll go side by side, but if Tice is going to run down Comstock, he's got to make this pass quick.
Yeah, they gave up about a half a tenth just getting side by side in the middle of 3 and 4, and the longer they stay side by side, the harder it's going to be for him to chase him down. However, his teammate David Washington's not going to give him an inch. I think Washington might have almost gotten into the wall off turn 2, and that will allow Tice to go ahead and take that position away. That was the best thing that could have happened for Joseph Tice, because now this gives him the opportunity to try to chase down David Comstock. However, Washington's not done with this battle as he closes right back in on the back bumper of Joseph Tice. I thought for a moment he was going to try to make a move to get back beside his teammate, but he's going to stay behind him, and now he's going to allow Joseph Tice to start trying to chase down the race leader. The problem is that is about a half a second gap, and they gave up about a tenth while they were battling for that 2nd position.
6 laps to go when they cross the stripe. It is half a second at the moment. We'll see what it is when they come back to the start-finish line this time. At least just looking at it, yes, it is down. Tice was able to grab a tenth of a second. I couldn't tell if he was able to do anything there on the exit of turn 4, but here comes Joseph Tice. It looks like might just have the speed to get to Comstock, but it will be close. I don't know if he'll have the chance to get alongside the 42 machine, but that has to be his goal right now. He's got no chance at winning this race if he can't catch Comstock, and that's the first order of business in order to go try and steal this race win.
One thing I've heard old Darrell Waltrip say a lot, catching a driver is one thing, passing them is another, and that's what we're going to have to wait and see. Can Joseph Tice catch and pass David Comstock? He's got the faster car right now. He's been closing that gap. He gained just a little bit this last time by. If he gets there, can he make the move? How aggressive will he be to get his second win in a row here on Monday nights in the Full Throttle Cup Series? He's trying to close the door here. As we come back to the stripe, we're going to have 5 laps to go here at Charlotte. Can he catch David Comstock as they get to the stripe? He gains about a half a tenth right there. He's going to have to close that gap in larger margins if he wants to catch Comstock with time to actually make a move on him. He's not going to be able to do it if he's only gaining that little bit right there.
Half a tenth is not enough for Tice. It has to be more. He's got to find just a little bit more speed. Might change up his line a little bit, trying to make things happen. And I look at this battle, and I look at the way these top 2 drivers are running these corners. And David Comstock's getting an excellent run out of turns 3, and especially turn 4. He comes a little bit lower than you would think, and is able to make it happen and get a really good run off corner exit down the front stretch. So that might be something to watch as we pass the smoking car. Shouldn't be an issue for the yellow, but coming down to it, looking at 3 laps to go when they come across the stripe this time by. Tice is gaining a little bit, but it was only 4/100ths of a second. Now, as they cross the stripe, is it less? Yes, it is. It is now down to a tenth, and we get a yellow flag. 1 car around to the bottom. Anthony DeBarro in trouble, and David Comstock should be able to come away with the victory here after DeBarro makes contact with Ross Cato, or rather, Cato makes contact with DeBarro, spins him around. Here's the end of turn 1. DeBarro comes across the front of the field, and we might have had a race for that first position if we had gone green all the way, but not to be. Yellow flag comes out here with 3 laps to go, and Comstock just has to roll behind the pace car to get his first victory on a 1.5-mile track of 2017.
And I'll tell you what, if we can get an onboard view from David Comstock going off into turn 1, that was a scary moment going into turn 1 because he goes into the corner at full speed, not expecting anything to happen. He gets to the corner, and all of a sudden Anthony DeBarro's car is sliding back up the racetrack right into the groove where these guys needed to run. Absolutely incredible driving by all 3 of these drivers to be able to work their way around that spinning car. You see Comstock, he got up against the outside wall just a little bit, but it was enough to keep him clean, and then once the caution came out, he just has to coast around, as you mentioned, to get his second win on the 2017 season.
And this all started with pit strategy. Remember, he took 2 tires on one of the very first pit stops of the race that got him the track position, and then he had the car fast enough to stay up there, which we haven't been able to say too many times this season, but he made it work. He stayed in the top 5, stayed within a good pit sequence all night long, and then he got that yellow at the end when Washington had probably the fastest car of them all, at least was running the fastest laps at the time of the yellow when he and Anthony DeBarro made contact, and then was able to come down, get 4 tires, was the first off pit road, and just drove away from the restart and didn't have to worry about anything. And definitely, I think we have to admit, was in the catbird seat, as DW would put it, because if you end up having a wreck like this anywhere within 5 laps to go on the sim, there is no setup for any form of green, white, checker overtime racing. So the race does end under yellow. And if you are the leader, doesn't matter if you necessarily have the fastest car, you're just in the right place at the right time. And even though Tice was coming in closing, Comstock was there when the yellow flew. Comstock will in turn be the driver to get his second win of 2017.
Yeah, big victory for David. But how about Dwayne Vincent? He's going to come up with a 5th place finish. He was trying for that fuel strategy, see if he couldn't steal one away from these guys. It didn't quite work out for him, but still going to get a good run finishing inside the top 5 here tonight. And then how about Mike Kelly? You mentioned him earlier on. He had a pretty good run. He's going to finish 7th as well. So a couple of drivers we haven't talked a lot about recently. Going to get a couple of pretty good runs for these guys tonight.
Good runs for them, but our attention to the front of the field. It might be at 65 miles an hour, but he won't care. It won't matter. David Comstock, the Club Carolina driver, is able to bring it home at home and win the WinView Games 150 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Victorious tonight, his second win of the 2017 RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. Gets congratulations from Andrew Farinars. David Washington was there. Joseph Tice is going to be your runner-up tonight. David Washington finishes 3rd. We'll talk to those 3 drivers in just a bit, but we'll go ahead and take our last commercial break of the evening after David Comstock gets it done here at Charlotte. You are watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing. Welcome back to LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, where we have just wrapped up the WinView Games 150 from Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina, and David Comstock has come away with the race victory. We'll talk to him here in just a moment, but before we do, it's time to give you your full field rundown, which is presented tonight by Joel Real Timing. Coverage of tonight's race is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim, behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. Get yourself a basic download for free or get the pro version today at joel-real-timing.com. David Comstock picks up his second victory of 2017 and his first on a mile-and-a-half oval in this Full Throttle Cup Series season. With the victory tonight at Charlotte, Joseph Tice nearly went back-to-back, but finished one spot short tonight and came home second. David Washington had a fast car all night long, and after a few tough weeks, I think he'll be quite happy with a third-place finish. Andrew Farinars won at Talladega a few weeks ago and has managed to parlay that to 3 straight top fives. It's another one for him. He'll come home fourth tonight. Dwayne Vincent, with one of his best runs of the season after he got some help from pit strategy, comes home fifth. Brandon Bowie finishes in the 6th position this evening. Mike Kelly brought it home 7th, and Nick Silver came home 8th. A season's best for Gabe Wood, who finishes in the 9th position, and Sean Casto in that number 52 O'Reilly Auto Parts Chevrolet rounds out your top 10 this evening.
Lionel Kalisto will finish in the 11th position here tonight, and then Daytona winner Trevor Rapallo is going to finish 12th. Nelson Rivera will come home 13th. Christopher Hurlow making his return to the Full Throttle Cup Series. Didn't have the finish he was looking for here tonight. He will finish 14th, and finishing 15th in the last car on the lead lap here tonight, Ross Cato finishes 15th. One lap down in the 16th position goes to Anthony DeBarro. After having that incident with David Washington on the backstretch, not going to have the night he was looking for once again here in his return to the Full Throttle Cup Series. AJ Browning finishes 17th. 18th goes to Dylan Jones, our pole sitter. 19th goes to Shane Ewing. And then Scott Semley finishes 20th.
All of these drivers from here on out ran into some form of trouble over the course of the evening. Douglas Wyatt finished in the 21st position. John Abbott came home in 22nd when it was all said and done. Doug Roth found himself 23rd at the end of the day. Austin Koop finished in the 24th position. Steve Gottschalk in that Nerf machine, the number 91 car, finishes 25th. Jason Jacoby finishes in 26th at the end of the night. Daniel Everhart ran into trouble early after running in the top 5 for the majority of the time. He had a piece running and then got in trouble and ends up 27th at the end of the night. Eric Arnold finishes 28th. Corbin Hemstreet, one of the WinView Games machines, finishes 29th. And Sean Poundy finished 30th at the end of the evening here at Charlotte.
Jonathan Cadell will finish in the 31st position tonight. Scott Walker finishes 32nd. Bruce Ackerman will come home 33rd. 34th goes to Carl Shedd. Michael Priester finishes 35th. Randy Yoakum comes home 36th. Jose Gonzalez is 37th. And rounding out your 38-car field here tonight, Braden Whittaker finishes 38th. And that completes your full field rundown. I believe, James, you have caught up with our race winner down in Victory Lane. He's the winner of the WinFuel Games 150. I'll get it right eventually. Down in Victory Lane with David Comstock.
WinView Games 150, Mr. Macklin. There, I got your back. But time to talk to our winner here. I know Southern California is, technically speaking, home in a, birthright sense. But this being the adopted home here in the Charlotte area, David, how big is it for you to grab the win here? And how big is it for you to grab your first win in the Cup car here in RSR competition? You've gotten it done in the Xfinity car in the Icebreaker Series, but never in the Cup car. So 2 pretty big milestones that you just covered tonight.
Yeah, I think we came close one year and just lost it within the last few laps. But yeah, definitely glad to get another win here at what is now my home residing place where I live, and also for JT Plaques based out here in Charlotte. So good to get them a win as well. So really proud that we got it done tonight.
Whole trio then of folks based in the Charlotte area. If you throw me in there too, I guess. So, and you look at the series too, and you look at the way things have come up. We've talked a lot about Aegis here throughout the season, but you are the one driver that has found a way to break through that whole cabal of people and make it happen. And I think tonight it all came on that pit stop at the beginning when you took 2 tires. Most people weren't able to hang on to the track position that they got if they found a way to short pit or not take 4 tires or do something alike. What was different on your 42 machine? What allowed you to keep that thing up at the front of the field, even when you didn't have 4 tires like everybody else around you?
It was pretty tight to start, and then it would start to slowly free up on pretty much the entry and exit to the corner. But for me, I felt like 2 tires was kind of an option to try to do to get track position for one, and then also with a little bit worn left side tires, it would help free the car up a little bit earlier for me on the start of that run. So decided to give it a shot. It worked out pretty good. We hung with the leaders pretty decently, and when those green flag pit stops happen, that's definitely where we made up a lot of ground on our in and out laps for sure. Pit crew did a good job.
And then I think your big moment was that final yellow flag with about 15 laps to go. You had the lead. You knew Washington was coming on the fresh tires, and then that comes out. Everybody gets to come down pit road, and you get a fresh reset. How big was that in your mind when you were able to see that yellow flag come out and then just that final restart? How impressive was that? You jumped out to about 3 or 4 car lengths, and you were just gone from there.
Yeah, that second to last yellow, I actually didn't want to see a yellow to the end because I felt like we were going to plateau like we had done all night compared to Washington. He was gaining on me maybe half a tenth to a tenth every lap. So with how far back he was and with how many laps to go, I don't think he would have gotten to me. I think he would have plateaued, but I kind of feel more so that very last yellow at the end, that was kind of more the biggest scare of the night, because that's the car that was sitting there. I almost ran into it because I jumped on the brakes and it jumped sideways on me, and I was kind of committed to the top, but I thought the car was going to slide up. So when I thought it was going to slide up, I was going to go low, but when I slowed down, it jumped sideways. But we got lucky and we held on and had a really good restart. Yeah, that was definitely good to get a good jump and then start to get into a rhythm again and see how I compare and what I need to do to stay out in front, and really happy we did it.
I'll admit at this point I have a few of them memorized. I know you got to thank Aftermath Motorsports and Jonathan Heitzman and all the folks at JT Plax, but everybody else that makes it happen for you, David, go ahead, give them your shout-outs and your thank yous for the evening.
Yes, absolutely. With Aftermath Motorsports, thank you to them for letting me come over and run here with Real Sim Racing, and you guys broadcasting every single week of Live Sim Racing TV, and Gary Mercer Trucking, JT Plax Plus. With the win tonight, we get, if you guys go to jtplax.com and use code DAVID3, you'll save 25% off a cool custom full-colored plaque there. So code DAVID, the number 3 at the end of it. And then Monster Energy, of course, for being on board every single week. JD Laird and JDR Graphics for keeping my paint nice and fresh every single week for me. And Hick and Jix, EJ Brakes, all the fans, everybody watching. Appreciate you guys.
A big night at home for the driver of the number 42. Congratulations, David, on the win tonight. We will see you, I suppose, 2 weeks from now, since we've got Memorial Day off.
Absolutely. You guys have a good Memorial Day.
You too, Dave. So there's your winner tonight, David Comstock. And from here, we'll go down to pit road and we'll find the driver of the number 5 machine, Joseph Tice, who is with our Brian Macklin.
Yep, I've caught up with last week's winner at Kansas, Joseph Tice. You came up just a little short here tonight, finished second. Take us through your night.
Well, I can't complain tonight. I had a really good run. I qualified good. I was really good on the long runs. I don't know if I was better than Comstock on the long runs, but other than that, I mean, we had a really solid night, top 5 all night.
Yeah, talk about the long green flag run that you had tonight. We almost went 100 laps of green flag racing before the last caution came out that slowed things down. How hard is that as a driver to run that long under green, knowing that you still have quite a ways to go in the race? It looked like it had to have been pretty strenuous from up here in the booth.
Yeah, unfortunately on that long run, I think I burned my tires off a little bit too quick towards the end, because that was when David caught me and passed me. But for the most of that run, I was doing really good. You're just concentrating on not trying to drive too hard, but not baby it either. And really enjoyed that long green flag run and pit stops. That was some fun stuff.
Okay, so Joseph, I got to ask you that theoretical question. The caution does not come out with 3 laps to go. Do you have enough left in your car to run down Comstock and try to challenge him for the win?
Well, of course I'm going to say yes. It's all theory. No, I don't know. I might could have gotten to him, but I mean, the laps were so even there, right? That last 10 lap run. I mean, it was so tit for tat. I don't know. I might could have gotten to him, but I don't know that I got around him anyway.
Well, you did a good job here tonight. You won last week at Kansas. You finished second here tonight at Charlotte. You're on a roll. I want to give you one more opportunity, though, to say thank you to your sponsors and say hello to any friends or family that might be watching. Who makes it happen for you on the number 5 machine, Joseph?
Yeah, I got to thank Aegis Motorsports and Julio, the team owner, Chef Andy's. Thank all my teammates. We all work really hard together, and I think we're making things happen pretty good. Thank you guys. You guys put on one heck of a broadcast. It's always great to go back and see what you guys say. Thank the RSR admins, and thank my wife for allowing me to do this every Monday night.
Well, congratulations on your second place finish here tonight at Charlotte. We'll see you in 2 weeks at Dover, Joseph.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, that was Joseph Tice. He finished second here tonight at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. A very impressive drive for the number 5 machine. We were hoping to catch up with a third-place finisher. However, we were not able to catch up with him. So I'm going to send this back to James Pike. We had a very exciting race here tonight. One of the few races we've had this year where we've had a long green flag run the way we had. It was about 92 laps when it was all said and done. Absolutely incredible green flag run for those drivers, and it ended up with a pretty exciting finish as well.
Pretty intense finish when it was all said and done. And Brian, I didn't even bother to think about it until now, but here we are, and we are now 12 races through the season. That's a third of the way done. So only 2/3 left of the season to go. Still, obviously, a lot of racing, but we've kind of made our way here through the first part of this RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series season. And I guess question I've got to ask you before we sign off here, is there any big moments that jump out for you? Any big storylines that you feel like we need to watch as we go into the second segment of the year?
Well, I think certainly looking at those drivers that are on the bubble of not making the playoffs, that don't have a victory yet, you're going to have to look at some of those drivers and see and wonder if they can get the job done, get the points they need, or get the victory that they're looking for. One driver that really jumps out at me is one of the PowerTech drivers, and that's Carl Shed. Right now, he's sitting pretty far down in the standings without a victory. If he has a couple more bad races like he had tonight, he could be in jeopardy of not making the playoffs. So going into the second segment, I think we're really going to have to focus in on that points battle around the 16th position, see how this shapes up for those drivers. There's quite a few in that little window there. You've got Sean Casto, Brandon Bowie, Dwayne Vincent still looking for a victory, Stefan Marinac, Mike Kelly, all these drivers that are right around the cut line as far as making the playoffs or missing. It's going to be an interesting second segment as we head towards the playoffs.
Right, because by the end of the second segment, we'll be all done with all that. So I think, at least from my perspective, I look at this and I see the way that Aegis has, dominated for the most part these first 12 races. But I think tonight it's impressive that David won the way that he did, but it's also worth giving pause to David Comstock because of all those Aegis drivers and the drivers with the Aegis connections up there, he is the one guy who has consistently found his way to the front of the field and been able to make it happen at points and get multiple wins now, not just the one. So watch that 42 versus a whole host of Aegis drivers. It's maybe a lone wolf versus a wolf pack, I suppose. But both of them and both sides of that equation have been equally as powerful at points, and we'll just have to see how that shapes up as we get into the summer races. But we're going to go ahead and sign off here from Charlotte Motor Speedway and give you a break here for 2 weeks. We will be off next week for Memorial Day, so you can enjoy it with your friends and family and also take that moment to recognize all of our men and women in the armed forces who have given so much to this country, some even with their lives, to defend this great land that we love. Make sure you give your credit and your dues to them at some point over the Memorial Day weekend, but also obviously enjoy the racing, Xfinity racing and Cup racing from Charlotte, the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix. It is indeed racing's greatest weekend, and we hope you get your chance to take your fill of it. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time. We'll be right back here, 9:35 Eastern Time on YouTube iRacing Live for LSRTV's coverage from Dover, which is where we began segment 2. But for now, we will conclude our coverage of tonight's Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking event here on LSRTV. So for my colleague up in the booth, Brian Macklin, for our producer down in the production trailer, Cisco Scaramuzza, for John Abbott and the admins at Real Sim Racing, and for Laura Lawson, Andy Kessler, Evan Pasoko, and all the folks at LSRTV. I'm James Pike, thanking you for watching tonight's broadcast, wishing you a wonderful Memorial Day weekend and a great weekend of racing, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time from the first state. Good night, everyone.